Neirea's lineup, so no surprise to see that one going down. The story of Muzzy's lineup as a whole, though, is that he's teching all of his decks ever so slightly against Shaman. We call it kind of a soft target strategy, where he's not all in and bringing specific archetypes to target a deck. He's just bringing good decks, but then he's using tech inclusions to target himself towards Shaman. Crazed Alchemist, for example, is in some of his decks to be able to snipe down the important totems, but Neirea, quite fortunately, since the majority of his tournament now has been coming up against Muzzy, has managed to omit Shaman from his lineup. He does not have it. Despite that, when I break down the matchup chart, as I did for the opening encounter between the two, I still make Muzzy something around 53% favored on matchups.
Yeah, I do wonder as well that because they've played each other, you know, they can go over VODs, they can check out the series. I wonder how much impact that makes on them knowing this could be a potential rematch. You know, like, sure, if you've already played someone the day before with the same lists and probably the same strategy you're going to use on them again, you've got to think, okay, what could I have done differently? Does the ban change? Does just my overall strategy in terms of how my decks interact with my opponent's decks change? We'll see. As they have kicked off, Muzzy kicking off on the Shaman and Neirea on the Druid.
Yeah, strong matchup in the opener for Muzzy here. He's definitely got the favorable end of the opening queue. This is a hard matchup to Jade Druid to get through. The one way they quite often are able to combat this is if they go ramp, and then a quick primordial drink, right? Like, that's normally the way to get it done. Neirea is actually some of the way to making that happen, but in normal circumstances, this is a slight edge to Muzzy in this matchup, and that's kind of the trend throughout a lot of the matchups. I think Muzzy edges the mage mirror, for example. He has a slightly more greedy list that can help him get through. That's not going to happen because Muzzy ended up banning the mage, but it's an element of the lineup. I think Neirea's quest rogue against the field is slightly weaker because he doesn't have the crabs in there. And there's just those little break points interacting in the lineups as a whole that are just giving this the slight edge to Muzzy, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, you know, you've just talked a lot about the matchups and how they work out. We heard Muzzy and Neirea talk about each other in terms of how much they respect each other and how much they think they're both great players. And Muzzy is just a straight-up fan of the high-level gameplay and high-level matchups.
Thing about Hearthstone is playing very high pressure, high legend games, and I think a lot of other players would agree with me on this. It's where Hearthstone is most enjoyable. When you're at the high level, there's a lot of stress that you have to deal with.
Hell of a lot of stress. Like, this is a very important match for both of these players.
I think we actually definitely saw this from Mage yesterday, where he looked a little bit out of sorts in the opening skirmishes of his series, but then when it came down to that super complicated quest rogue versus control paladin game at the end, he looked right at home all of a sudden, and wow. That is what they call in the business a bit of a low roll. Double Edwin Van Leaf.
Yeah, I mean, it's a high roll in terms of naming conventions, but low roll in terms of actual stats. Double 1-1 is quite the shame there, but Neirea does not have swipe available. And that preemptive hit in must just say, hey, Muzzy, guess what I got in hand? Because there are very few instances that you would put another minion to 2 health.
Right.
It doesn't help swipe. It doesn't change anything for Wrath, unless there's a sneaky Moonfire in the list that no one's seen. It's pretty much saying, guess what? So innovate Primordial Drake. 2
choices here, and it's a straight-up divergent path for Muzzy. Does he want tempo or does he want value? If he wants tempo, he can just go ahead and coin out a 5/5 here. This is all in mind that he knows Innovate Drake is happening next turn because of exactly what you said. If he wanted to go value instead, then he can go Manatide Totem. Then Manatide Totem would survive, draw him a couple of extra cards, but he would then have the big threat of the 4/8 coming through that he wouldn't be able to deal with. Between this, the 5/5 hitting the board, the 2/3 that will also survive, he has much more potential to push through damage, and he can push through damage as well just by devolving this 8-mana taunt out of the way. Not a great deal of 7-mana taunts that can put a stop to him here. No. Emperor Veclaw and Curator, I believe. Is
and also now the kicker for me is devolve plus Flame Tongue. Means that even if it's not a taunt, you can probably get a decent trade into it if you really want to or need to, depending on what minion comes out. You know, do you want Geddon on the board? Probably not. So you definitely want the trade to happen here.
Ooh,
that's pretty good value. Neirea is probably not too upset with that.
I think he's upset the devolve happened full stop.
Yeah, yeah,
first and
but
foremost,
if it was going to come down.
Outcome-wise, you're absolutely right. I think that's definitely a good outcome for him. But worse in particular, worse feeling for Neirea, because Muzzy actually only plays one single copy of the devolve to make room for these sea giants that he has, which is even more shaman mirror tech. He's cut one devolve and one bloodlust from his list, so even more unlikely than usual that he would have that devolve already.
Yeah, sea giants for him, as you said, Sol, because a lot of players have been messing around with one, and the cuts have varied throughout the list, but Muzzy's saying, no, if I'm going to play with one, I want to play with two. Now though, Muzzy has lost the board. To a certain extent, yes, he's got more minions now, but you know there's a 6-8 on the board. But what's important is he just has more minions for multiple targets for Neirea to deal with. If it was just a 1v1, then you're probably feeling Neirea's side of the board at this point. But any sort of chip damage coming down now, you know, the bloodlust being drawn just changes this because Neirea's on such a low health total.
Yeah, and there was a visible sigh of relief from Neirea as Muzzy's entire hand got committed to the board, because at that point, once a player dumps their whole hand, any reads, inclinations, hunches you have about what a particular card in hand might be, those go out the window. And that's often a very relaxing feeling for you, especially if you're a very long-time player like Neirea who understands all the mechanical situations inside out, because it means you can just play the odds at that point, right? Like the hand is empty, X amount of cards are being drawn, what are the likelihood that he can Bloodlust me, Jade Lightning me, whatever it is you need to play around, it becomes a much, much more simple equation when reads, hunches, whatever you want to call them, have just gone out the window.
Yeah, Neirea will really want to be drawing a spell now. 2 Gadget Sands, and the Ooze, although he's a good card, is not available because, oh, well, it is available as a 3-3. We're not going to get any value because there is no weapon available at the moment or equipped.
Board state is being built though, and with one swipe gone for Neirea, it's hard for him to answer these token board states when just the sheer number of minions on Muzzy's board exceeds his, but the Auctioneer turn can now make some stuff happen. Blossom, not what he was looking for. Would have loved a Wrath or another Earthen Scales just to keep on cycling, but does have enough mana now just to drop hero power and start
not the end of the world.
State.
Yeah, not the end of the world having a hero power the armor gain and just kill off one of these minions. Means that there is something to do. Neirea is on the cusp here because, as you said, Muzzy, dry on resources, not getting mana tide down last turn because he valued the Ire, just putting higher pressure on the board. You know, it is definitely valid. I'm not saying it's wrong, but what it means is if this Ire doesn't work out for him, then everything is delayed an additional turn and an additional turn, and all the while Neirea has got some value in hand now, with at worst being able to play Gadgets and Jade Blossom next turn.
Ooh, just not good enough at this point though. That's the sad thing for Muzzy.
Nessie's just getting there.
Yep, sure is. And Neirea actually had the freedom on the previous turn to trade through the Ire and leave a greater number of bodies on the board, because Bloodlust would still be 1 damage off lethal at that point, and Bloodlust plus some other source of damage is just exceedingly unlikely at that point, going back to what I was saying a couple of turns ago, where it just becomes a pure mathematical situation of what's being likely to be drawn, and there only being 1 Bloodlust in Muzzy's deck.
1 Bloodlust, but 2 Jade Lightnings, and there's one of them, and Jade Lightning is one of the few cards that Neirea can't do much about, right? It's just going to get him for 4, potentially 5 with a totem. And it means that he can't put taunts up in the way to stop Bloodlusts. He's just going to take the damage, so...
Feral Rages and Earthen Scales definitely have something to say about it, though. And with a potentially full Auctioneer turn ahead of him here, Neirea has to consider how deep he wants to go here, whether he just wants to go Curator, potentially set himself up for lethal on the following turn, or whether swipe to try and dig for the armor gain. It looks much more promising to me. Neirea agrees, but that's a brick at this point, which means Muzzy has a small outer here, just the 1 Jade Lightning off the top in this position.
And he pretty much needs it. Look at this board starting to really stack up here. All the board empty as well, so now Flame Tongue number 2. Bloodlust won't give any extra damage. And that is not a Jade Lightning. The problem is, a lot of the power taunts, mainly Alakira I was thinking of, can't really come out with Jade Lightning either. Do you ever wrath
Rathian just to draw a card.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, I think
you
it's
just
right.
need it, right? It feels bad, but I think you need it.
Yeah, I mean, if you Rathian and you draw the second Jade Lightning in the next draw, which is 1 out of 14, the one after, which is 1 out of 13, then you still have spell damage totem out to then get through the Jade Lightning, so that makes sense to me.
Maelstrom, don't do too much. What does Neirea have left from the Curator? 1 Drake. And Hungry Crab.
Yep.
Well, Earthen Scales is a good one, especially when you can go for at least 7 armor.
That's just game.
Yeah.
He's got the board. The only out at this point was Muzzy just going for straight up face damage. The Earthen Scales locks that out completely. That should just be game from this point for Neirea, who's going to take a pretty swift lead as long as that Earthen Scales does come into play this turn.
Yeah, I actually prefer Ooze. Just drop the oozing.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. There's the crab, though. Most important. Hungry Crab is a weird card to run in J-Druid, actually.
Yeah, so
It's not even a standard tech card.
It does show up in the Curator list every now and again, as we do see Neirea taking it down. Muzzy recognized exactly the situation. We explained to you that that Earthen Scales shut his last door, but the Hungry Crab does show up in the Curator list, which is slightly unusual in itself. You either run Stampeding Kodo to try and answer Finger things, if that's a big strength in the meta, or you run Hungry Crab to kind of similar things, right?
Yeah.
Counteract Murloc action and pick your poison at that point. But Neirea picking up a big win there in an unfavored matchup is definitely a boon for him because, as I mentioned, I think his lineup is marginally unfavored. 3% or so unfavored when you break it all down. That means he's probably going to have to pick up an unfavorable along the way to get in an advantageous position. He has just done that.
Yeah, that's looking really good for Neirea so far. He is taking that first victory. You can actually check out more about Neirea, as I believe he's actually just going to talk about how much he actually plays the game, as it's something we discussed a lot at the Winter Championships.
My 2017 is going well so far.
And now Neirea, he's got the win.
Yep, Neirea is going to the top 8.
I got pretty good results, just consistent results.
This is back-to-back championship appearances for Neirea.
I'm kind of happy that I qualified second time, but at the same time, my end goal is always to win the World Championship, right? I will be excited if I qualify for Worlds, but right now I'm not excited. Other players should be worried because they should not expect mistakes from me.
Neirea, cool, calm, and collected. This looks like it's another day at the office.
I would say until I get the World Championship title, I wouldn't be satisfied. But even after then, I'll probably find some other goals. Maybe not. I'll find out if I win.
It's definitely been a lot of fun hanging out and getting to talk to Neirea over the course of the 2 seasons we've been casting this year, as he has been a major factor. And I mentioned before we went into that piece about the the amount of time Neirea has been playing the game and how many hours he puts into practice. And there has been a shift from winter to spring, and he's actually gone a bit of a harsher training regime now.
Yeah, and it's primarily RDU, I believe, that's responsible for that. They practice together, and RDU told me they were building lineups together. They were practicing at Seat Story while we were there. And RDU said, yeah, I'm building my lineup with Neirea. Well, Neirea just ended up bringing his exact same lineup from playoffs. So I don't know how much deck building was there on the part of Neirea. But the one thing RDU really instilled in Neirea for this tournament is that real heavy grinder mentality practice regime. Because we heard Neirea say at the Winter Championships that he believed he played better on a more lax schedule, where he still watched a ton of the game, theory crafted a ton of the game, talked to other pros about matchups, but his actual play time was relatively limited. But now he says he's back on kind of a 5 to 6 hour a day kind of hard practice schedule.
Yeah, and Neirea, we talk a lot about his experience, and his experience playing in front of crowds as well at this point. And we've got an amazing crowd here. We saw some shots earlier as well, and there's been, the crowd is packed at the moment, and at the side areas, the side events that are going on, I can just see big queues from where I'm seeing.
That puzzle's nearly done. It's getting really... They're going to have to put a new one up for tomorrow at this rate. Look at that.
I'd love it. They just go out and buy a puzzle. It's like a 30-piece one and just stick it to the wall. And they're like, okay, yeah, this is all we've got left to work with. But some people are really committing to this one.
Yeah,
and it's looking pretty sweet.
Yeah, like that guy just in the middle of nowhere, just jammed a piece with no connectors. Just, yeah, that goes there. I just know.
I'm just sure.
Feel it.
But yeah, we've got meet and greets going on. Challenge the devs as we see Matt Weibel there.
Matt Weibel getting bodied by drawing patches right there. Look at that.
We should be commentating those games as well.
No, actually, Joe, did you see the picture on Twitter? It's like Che posted an image on Twitter. That moment was him drawing patches, and everyone just freaking out about it. Yeah,
brilliant. But yeah,
even the devs aren't immune. They can't flick a switch and stop themselves drawing patches. It happens to the best and the worst of us. That's just Brode.
There's a reason he's not here.
Only Brode has the power.
Exactly.
Thanks, Ben Brode.
But now the crowd's also been awesome, just getting really behind the Chinese players as well as all the other players as well. But there's been, the big China story of just Trunks staying in the tournament at this point. But for these two guys, it is pretty much all on the line, but with two very different stories of their own. Muzzy, felt he proved himself in playoffs. Can't argue. But
no, I can't.
But there is
specifically me.
Yes, you're not allowed to argue quite legally, actually. But Muzzy wants to do the extra step, right? Just getting through playoffs, fantastic. But you don't go to championships saying I was happy with playoff wins.
Yeah, and I mentioned this. I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit because we did cast this exact matchup earlier on, but Muzzy has been a top X player, like almost any number you want to assign to that X, he has been in that top grouping of players in the world. And those who are kind of in the know have known that, but he hasn't had the big result to expose himself to the more casual fan, to really make people understand that he's on the level of a Kalento or whoever, you hold up to your bastion of Hearthstone skill. Now with that 10-0 run for America's playoffs, it's really hard to argue with a streak like that. He stretched it out to 11 as he picked up his opening win against Neirea, but then fell down to the lower bracket, now 1-1 in this tournament, and with an 11-1 record in full this season.
Yeah, and this mage list from Muzzy, still, I have questions about it, to be honest. It's the one
What
that runs...
are your questions, Raven?
Why Antonidas and Medivh, and one Frostnova, one Acolyte, one Doomsayer? 2 Mana Worms is a pretty reasonable answer, but...
Two Mana Worms, check.
Yeah, okay, got him. I can get on board with that decision.
Yeah, so I will try to answer some of your questions.
Thanks, mate.
The full greed, I'm actually okay with. The really greedy, like, super top end, I'm totally cool with that. I can see matchup applications, making sure you've got the beef to get through Taunt Warrior, enough huge threats that you kind of overrun their Dirty Rats. They don't have enough Dirty Rats to deal with all of your huge threats. Also helps out, I think, a little bit in the mirror to just have that little bit of extra power in the late game. The amount of one-offs, though, I am not going to defend. I'm with you on that. I am a fan of a nice, clean, concise deck list that has, 14 or 15 copies of 2 copies of cards in it.
Evolve Shaman is your favorite list, right?
It is, yeah. Well, now it's kind of like, now it's gone a bit more one Devolve, one Sea Giant thing
ignore
going
it
on
all.
in a lot of
Ignore
places,
it.
yeah. Let's get back to that 2 OVs list with just Patches and Ire in it.
Exactly.
Oh, those are the days.
Well, let's get back to this game, as Muzzy is getting quite a lot of value from this one of Acolyte in his list, and Neirea started to just trade away early into that Mana Worm. And in terms of quest progression, he's got a bouncer, and he's bounced the Swashbuckler back once, but the hand doesn't look amazing. I feel like Swashbuckler's going to do the work here in terms of the value of the hand going forward.
That looks pretty reasonable to me, honestly. He's 1 bounce away from getting the quest activation in hand, at which point he has prep quest available to him. He also has a Novice Engineer just to dig deeper, and now Mimic Pod to dig deeper again. So I think if you're calling this a not particularly promising hand, then you've got some very unrealistic expectations of what Quest Rogue is supposed to do.
Sure, I mean, the Water Elemental is probably a frustrating pick,
sure.
just because it's just too expensive to play. If you're getting your quest done as quickly as you're probably going to get it done as Neirea.
He could just play it now and have a Water Elemental.
Factual, correct, yes. I mean, you could just play a 4-drop on 4. Mana Bind, okay, that changes a few things. I love Mana Bind as a card. It's a shame it's not played more often.
I mean, the reason I throw that out there as, a sort of semi-serious point is that he doesn't really have quest activation set in his hand just yet. So he doesn't know which turn he's going to be completing the quest on. So he doesn't really know whether this 3 mana that he just spent on Swashbuckler and bouncing is actually relevant to his overall quest progress in terms of whether it speeds it up by a turn or not. So the potential to just develop a 3/6 and then have that around to answer any threats that come down on the following turns actually look like it would be a relatively promising play.
I think the main thing that sticks out to me with this hand is the quest completion, sure, you know, it's almost there. But, you know, patch is already gone. And then there aren't actually that many minions to use as 5/5s, right? There just isn't too many. Yeah. And your opponent's just drawn 3 cards off Acolyte.
Yeah.
And the list is, you know, the way you play this list against Rogue is normally just very aggressive in itself, as we're about to see. We're just dropping a minion down. Ooh. Well, that changes a couple of things now. Because you'd imagine the amount of digging you can do with Novice Engineer means you will get some more minions pretty quickly.
Yep, leading out with Novice, using the oldest copy of Novice Engineer in hand, which as a general rule is good sequencing. The card to the furthest on the left of your hand is the card that your opponent has the most information on at any given point. So if you have 2 copies of the same, the one further to the left is usually the one that your opponent's more likely to have a read on. There are, as with any situation in Hearthstone, exceptions to that rule, which is what makes this such a beautiful game.
Unless you really want to bait someone.
Oh, there you go. You love to see that.
Yeah, I mean, this is now just disgusting, right? Because instead of
this hand went from meh to disgusting in the eyes of Raven.
Yeah, I mean, you know, 2 cards drawn, one's the Balfin, and one's another Swashbuckler to complete the quest. I think that adapts my point to no minions in hand to actually suddenly you've got 3 from 2 draws and with that not needing a bouncer.
In regards to your no minions in hand point, I kind of let it fly, but if you look at the hand, there was 2 Novice Engineers in hand, which are going to draw...
Not when I originally said
There was
it.
1 Novice Engineer in hand, which is going to draw more minions. There's a Mimic Pod in hand, which is most of the time going to draw more minions. Like, it was going to get there eventually, right?
Eventually, though.
Yeah, sure.
How much eventually have you got versus a Burn Mage that drew 3 cards on turn 4?
I think that's a reflection more of the matchup than the quality of the hand, right? Like, if you'd have said he needs a much more oppressive hand than this in this matchup, then I would have got on board with you straight away.
So basically, the lesson is listen to what I mean and not what I say.
It's a lesson that I'm slowly learning piece by piece.
We'll get there.
Come 2019, I will have full Raven interpretation skills.
Perfect. Go along with your Lorinda interpretation skills.
I'm already fully fluent in Lorinda.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, well, Neirea is actually just, you know, again, quite obviously now with the Swashbucklers just progressing towards getting this quest done. There is a prep to be able to activate it, but these Swashbucklers have not been pulling the best cards, to be completely honest. Anomalous, not great. Water Elemental, definitely not amazing. But Arcane Missiles, with 5/5s on the board, yeah, okay, it's 3 damage. Does that even matter? Probably not.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why Swashbuckler really bit the dust originally out of the rogue list, is that first and foremost, it pulled patches if you played it early, which can be used as an extra 5/5 charger later on if you have less pirates in your deck to do that with. Secondly, the cards that Swashbuckler give you, because of the nature of Quest Rogue, if you're given a spell from your opponent's class, it's rare that any given spell is better than playing a 1-mana 5/5 from your hand, right? If you get a minion, it's likely to cost 3, 4, 5, however much mana, 8 in the cost of Anomalous, and then why on earth do you ever want to play an 8-mana 5/5 when you can just play 2 Fireflies for the cost of 4 mana and have the Flame Elementals on the board as well?
Especially when that 5/5 kills your whole board when it dies.
Yeah, in Anomalous, in Anomalous's case particularly, that's about as bad as it gets. Yeah. It's interesting in the against Mage in particular, though, because finding secrets against Mage can actually be a big deal in a lot of positions.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
Even Mana Bind to pick up some extra burn. Ice Block in particular is just a straight-up game winner in a lot of spots if you can get that. And since you're bouncing Swashbucklers over and over again in a lot of spots, it can be, you actually get a fairly decent chunk of rolls added to it, but any secret you get given puts your opponent in a position where they have to really plan to deal with the potential of Ice Block if they can't break the secret on the same turn.
Yeah, it's just even now, you know, this Water Elemental is just a non-card. Swashbuckler didn't generate a card, basically, for Neirea early on. But it's enough. I mean, the additional draw from the second Novice, the Balfin, basically accounting for 2 5/5s for 2 mana in 1 card. Now the deckhand as well. I feel like Neirea had only the smallest bit of a wonky opening, but then just the back end of these draws kind of just worked exactly how his hand needed to be. Right. Now it's just rough. Spanner Bind coming into play here because now Neirea has a counter spell.
Do you know what? That's actually a pretty solid pull for Neirea because Neirea can use that to block Frost Novas, which can stop him from dropping the lethal. He can also use it to block burn spells, which can stop Muzzy from setting up just the ice block and kill you kind of strategy.
Man, I mean, is this just checkmate at this point? That was second ice block. Self Alexstrasza does very little versus a board.
Literally nothing. Sometimes you just got to go all in on your statements, really.
It does something. It means like Neirea has to click a few more times.
All right, fine. Yeah.
See? Almost nothing.
The word literally was in fact too strong.
But there you go.
You win this
sometimes
round.
Just don't go all in on your statements.
Well played.
But Neirea is going to be.
Got
Neirea is going to be going 2-0 up versus Muzzy. And you know, this is just Neirea lost versus Muzzy early on yesterday.
Neirea lost to Muzzy early on.
Yeah,
reversing the situation.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
what I
honestly,
mean,
I do feel like Muzzy has a slightly favored lineup. I've mentioned it a couple of times, but as I also said, when your lineup is unfavored by a small matter of 3 or 4%, which is what I come out to it being, if you then win an unfavorable matchup in your opener, that flips right on its head, and then suddenly you have that kind of 4 to 6% edge going back the other way.
Yeah, now Neirea has his Quest Warrior versus what Muzzy's got left. He's got his Mage, his Druid,
Druid, and his Evolved Shaman.
Yeah. I would be feeling still reasonably okay. If I was
Right.
Muzzy, I think you're not feeling too bad about this.
And I think, I haven't actually spoken to Muzzy to confirm this, but he's got very, very obvious techs in his decks against Shaman specifically. You know, the Double Sea Giant, the Crazed Alchemist. I think, like, the Double Sea Giant is actually very good against Warrior as well. The level of greed in his Mage deck kind of points towards Warrior as well. So there might be kind of a double soft target situation going on here where he's actually looking at Taunt Warrior and Evolve Shaman.
Yeah.
In which case, maybe the reverse sweep can come out.
Yeah, like TJ and Admirable say, it's kind of like 2 birds and a stone, right?
Yes.
There you go.
You hit the nail
There-
right on the top.
There you go. And while we get ready to get into this next match, you can find out a little bit more about Muzzy.
Well met.
My name is Muzahidul Islam. I'm 20 years old and my battle tag is Muzzy. I used to be a sports guy back in high school. I played baseball a bunch, but I don't actually even remember the last time I watched a baseball game now. I currently attend Albright College studying game and simulation development. The current plan is to eventually make my own games, understand game theory, and hopefully create another Hearthstone, right?
Okay, if Muzzy makes a game, he's not allowed to play. He's very good in games he didn't make. The man games he actually designed.
Yeah, also I think he actually switched to that game design course like fairly recently, within the last year or so, or the last couple of semesters for him. So I think like actually playing Hearthstone and switching from, you know, traditional sports to the esports environment has actually influenced him to want to go down that line, which is super, super interesting. But I don't know if Blizzard are playing a dangerous game here. They might have just advertised the competitor that finally takes down the Goliath of Hearthstone.
Yeah, I think as well that for Muzzy, and a lot of players, like, you talk to any pro player, and most players in general, but especially pro players, it's like they never don't like talking about card design, right? You know, it's just something that's very close to everyone's hearts.
Brian Kibler?
I've heard of him.
That is a man that will talk to you about some card design every now and again.
Yeah. I do enjoy those conversations, actually, because what happens is we normally start talking about a card, and then Kibler starts, and everyone just goes quiet and goes,
It's true.
Kibler, tell us
It's
stories.
true. Yeah, like,
tell us stories.
if we're watching a game and evaluating plays, like, you know, Kibler might say something, and some of us will disagree with him quite a lot of the time. But when he starts talking card design, you just sit and enjoy the wealth of knowledge and experience and history that that man has available to him.
100%, but now we can sit and enjoy what might be the end of this series and the end of Muzzy's run through the Spring Championship. Neirea, his Quest Warriors, his only deck left. Muzzy kicking it off again with his Jade Druid. Seeing a good old friend called Yogg. I think Ant would be happy to see this card in his hand.
Sure would. It's a really miserable feeling as Muzzy to be in this position where you won the opening skirmish against Neirea, and then in this kind of double jeopardy situation to then lose the run back. This actual like double jeopardy thing is something that a lot of other games actually try to avoid deliberately in like true double elimination brackets, for example. they'll have like seeding allowances to avoid this double jeopardy situation happening, because it's really just a bad feeling for everyone involved, but the nature of the group system that we're using here makes it pretty much unavoidable in a lot of spots. Neirea, though, is able to flip this game on his head, but he's deep in thought here. Look at him.
Yeah,
I actually winding up his mind like a toy soldier.
I actually kind of
like
like
on this board like a poised cobra.
Stop. I actually kind of like the potential of rematches, because it really interests me how players even approach the rematch, right? Like, how much do they think they could even change about their play, if anything?
Right.
Do they feel they have to mix something up because they've just played someone again? You know, I feel like there's a lot of mind games and thoughts that come into this rematch, but Muzzy, as you said, he's on the receiving end of 2-0 at this moment in time, and he's probably thinking, wow, my win versus Neirea initially might not even matter. Like, this is the game that matters at this point.
Yeah, but just to go back to the well on the point before, we took a look at that little piece on Muzzy. He's got nice decks to be running into Taunt Warrior with. The one question mark would be that Evolve Shaman, where opinions kind of vary based on the exact makeup of the Shaman. But he has double Sea Giant, which is actually really, really strong against Taunt Warrior, and that might not be immediately obvious, but this new style in which Taunt Warrior gets played actually just tries to not use any removal for as long as possible, right? They just try to play annoying taunt minions, not take too much damage, allow you to build a wide board state and continue taking value trades into these low attack minions. And then you can just start dumping Sea Giants because you have so many individual bodies on the board. So obviously, straight away, we're looking at Jade Druid here against Taunt Warrior, which is a very, very favored matchup right off the bat, especially because Muzzy has no card draw concerns right now. He has double Nourish available to him, because that's the one way that Taunt Warrior does get through, is when the hand runs dry. There's no auctioneers, or you dirty rat the auctioneer. There's no Nourish picked up. Muzzy certainly not going to find that problem here. Hello, Yogg.
Yeah, Yogg's okay. Yogg's not bad. But Jade Druid can also make Sea Giants for 1 mana sometimes. So
It's true.
that can actually help.
They can't ever make them for 0, though, so advantage Shaman.
Can only run 2 though. Jade Druid can only run 1.
Yeah?
Unless Earthen Scales. Now we're talking. Okay, well, we'll save that for that matchup later on, but as you said, the card draw not really a massive issue at all for Muzzy. Now options, gadgets and innovate plays. Just another Nourish if he really wants, because this Yogg getting pulled out and not having an answer by Neirea means it's just a 7-5.
Just a 7-5 hitting him in the face.
This actually could be better for Muzzy than playing Yogg in this game.
I honestly think in more than 50% of scenarios, just this Yogg hitting the board and not being answered is better than playing it, you know, turn 10 and beyond.
Yeah.
I would be inclined to agree. Because particularly against Taunt Warrior, like, Yogg can create like weird situations where it's 10 mana do nothing, or absolute chaos can happen and you end up, you know, burning a Jade Idol, for example, and then what, right? Then the Taunt Warrior can actually go on an inevitability game plan of actually killing everything in your deck.
There's also the problem that versus Taunt Warrior, if there's a board for the Warrior, like, if Yogg does 1 AoE, it'll often just not really deal with the board. You know, the health is normally very high on the Taunt Warrior minions. Right. So, like, yeah, even a Flame Strike, well, you know what? Say there's 2-3 minions survive and that's the end of Yogg.
Right.
What did it really accomplish?
Right. But there, get connected with face once, then Neirea equipped another weapon and hit it. That was a 14 damage pull off the Dirty Rat. 14 damage to Neirea's self off that Dirty Rat.
I take it. It's a bad card. 2 mana, 2/6 taunt, deal
14
14 to yourself.
You would not play that card.
Neirea did.
He didn't open his collection, scroll over Dirty Rat, go, 2 mana, 2/6, deal 14 to self. 2 of that bad boy in my list.
New card in the expansion. Death Knight Rat. 2/6 taunt, deal 14 to self. 1 mana though. Oof, changes things. Muzzy though is just basically putting the beat down on Neirea here, and that Fandral just meaning that the armor gain is actually, might not look like it because of the way this game's probably going to end soon, but the armor gain as well as the damage is very important. That is potentially just 1 additional rack hit you can soak up from the hero power. Not that we're there yet in this game, but still. It's valuable, and even next turn for Muzzy, he's got a lot of good options. Just having Swipe and Earthen Scales for a total of 5 from hand.
Yeah, even Pyromancer in combination with those can help him push through a taunt if it comes down to bank some of this damage to face that's there in the minions.
It's going to kill any minions itself.
Yeah. Neirea's in a mess.
Yeah, I think he knows it. Neirea often, when he's in a situation like this, say Neirea is just like, okay, I have lost. He will actually just sit and stare at his hand. As in the cards. But no, it's just his hand. It's like, this is my hand still, yes, good. Just to say, you know, like, where am I? Like, what's gone on? Is there anything I could have done? Is there anything I can still do? And maybe just to buy some time before the next game. He's gonna need to. As he leans back, he's like, okay, well, he got me that time. I have 2 more goes with this Tom Warrior.
Yep, and Muzzy, you know, kind of let out, all guns blazing, picking the Jade Druid first, knowing that Neirea was locked into his Taunt Warrior at this point. That is an extremely powerful matchup for Muzzy. The Jade Druid just did what it does, helped out by that Dirty Rat, which, by the way, Neirea was probably aiming to try and hit an Auctioneer out of the hand and then potentially deal with it with Sleep with the Fishes or the contents of his hand or whatever, but it did backfire in the end. He was also just trying to rush towards his quest completion as quickly as possible, because that's also another big win condition for the Warrior. You have to make that happen so that you can start firing shots before the Jades get up to 9-9, 10-10, and it's just not having an impact.
Yeah, also as well, if you pulled out Jade Behemoth, like, that's actually a pretty good pull. Even, you know, Jade Spirit again, like, anything to, one, deny Jades, and also the hit back from the minion you do pull isn't 14 damage. You know, like, anything like that, you're actually really happy with against Jade Druid. If they just miss a trick, then you can actually, you know, have that opening for Quest Warrior to actually get there. As we saw, though, you know, Yogg doing 14 and the double nourish for Muzzy, you're just not winning that game, to be completely honest.
Right. But it's still, as this series progresses, this feeling in the back of my mind is going to be, I'm going to be very upset to see either of these guys go out of the tournament, because they are two deserving World Championship competitors. Maybe if I could have it all and have the dream world, I'd have Muzzy qualify right now. He would take his rightful spot at the World Championship that a player of his caliber deserves, and then Neirea can re-qualify. Yeah, are you with me?
Yeah,
in
I'm
summer,
with you.
he can round out the triplet of coming to all seasonal championships and then hit Worlds. And I said in our Kranich series that we cast last that Kranich's achievement, if he pulls it off of three out of 4 World Championships, would be unparalleled. If Neirea could pull that off, that would be in there with a shout too.
It would be a great year of Hearthstone if all of those things happened. And we've had a great day of Hearthstone so far. Let's check out what's coming up later.
Greetings from Shanghai, my friends. Don't you stray too far away from that fire. There's more tales to tell. Coming up from China, Hoi and Kranich.
And here are Hoi and Kranich, or Kappa Face. Is this actually Hoi and Kranich? It is!
Hey!
Hey, that's nice. Just give us the Kappas in the chat. Both players looking quite happy, actually.
I mean, that's less Kappa and more Kappa pride when I look
know,
at it. I don't know what's going on here.
Let's add some rainbow colors to that MO and we'll really get what we
That's
mean.
just a...
Hoi's statue. Look at there we go. I was like, look at this focus. That is actually very similar to how he looked when he played.
It is.
Just 100% stony face.
Yes.
And we saw Kranich there with Hoi, of course. And I saw Kranich almost straight after he won his match early today. And he was like noticeably happy. And that's kind of sounds silly. He won a match. Why wouldn't he be?
Right.
But you know what I mean? He was like, it was a mixture of, like, I think just happiness and relief. You know, he was just like, okay,
yes,
that could have been a disaster, but I made it. But now, going back to our match, Neirea versus Muzzy. Neirea 2-1 up. Got this Quest Warrior to win a match with, and Muzzy going onto this Shaman with the double Sea Giant. The cuts, just to remind you, if you don't know, -1 Bloodlust, -1 Devolve. I would love, personally, to see actually -1 Stonehill and get that second Bloodlust back in there.
Jam that bad boy back in.
I just think Bloodlust is good.
Stonehill's actually a pretty solid card to have for this matchup in particular, though, right? Yeah. Which, again, if I'm theory crafting that there might be a little bit of a soft target towards Taunt Warrior in this lineup from Muzzy, in which case having both Stonehill still in the deck is actually a big plus for him. Are you going to ask me whether that works, cutting a Bloodlust and still targeting Taunt Warrior?
No, I'm thinking how good would what's better, Bloodlust or Stonehill in the mirror?
in the mirror.
That's kind of tough.
I think Stonehill.
I think Stonehill's probably better, isn't it?
Yeah, I think...
Because you fight for the board so much.
Yes. Like, Bloodlust can help you do that. Sometimes you do value Bloodlust in the mirror, but you're using it as a poor man's Flame Tongue most of the time when you do it,
I think
right?
I'm with you on this.
So, like, Bloodlust is okay. It can do a job in the mirror, but, like, generally it comes down to, like, a resource battle or someone just jams Doppel Evolve and then it can't happen anymore.
I just love Bloodlust. It's great in Hearthstone.
I just love Lamp.
It was great in World of Warcraft. It was great in Warcraft 3. It's just a great thing.
You've lost me.
Bloodlust is a spell that's been in Warcraft lore for a long time.
What does it do in, like, World of Warcraft?
When you use it, it's like a special, like, it's got a long cooldown, but when you pop it, your whole party gets super increased casting and attack speed.
Okay. So it's like
Kind of
it's like a fury effect for your whole party,
Exactly,
right?
yeah. You press it and then you go ham, basically.
In case you didn't know, Sottle knows nothing about anything in the Blizzard universe outside of Hearthstone.
Should have stopped at anything.
In case you didn't know, Sottle knows nothing.
About anything. Except for yo-yos and Hearthstone, I'll give you those two.
I do know that we're looking at a spectator bug right now.
Yes, I was like, okay, so Flame Tongue may be mispositioned. And also misplayed because it's not doing its job of giving the minion an additional buff.
Raven was checking his nice guy image here, like, that Flame Tongue's on the far left.
It is Muzzy, though.
Do I call this a misplay? Because this is Muzzy.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, there's just that pause where I'm like, sometimes players, believe it or not, are better than casters at playing the game sometimes. But this is just a stretch. I'm struggling. And when I'm struggling, you know it's a problem.
Yeah, but that Flame Tongue was dead center. It's now resumed its righteous position on the board. But
I want to see Twitch chat. Flame Tongue positioning.
LUL. But regardless, didn't matter where the Flame Tongue was. Neirea had the clear with Ghoul Sleep with the fishes regardless.
Neirea's hand now. He has to try and get to Curator without things being too crazy, I feel.
Seems good.
The,
Checks out.
what about Battle Rage as a one-of in these decks?
I like it.
Yeah, I'll confess I've not played a ton of games of Quest Warrior. Not my favorite deck in the world. But Battle Rage, I often feel always draws for one.
Yeah, but a lot of the time, like a 2-mana cantrip in this deck is actually to your benefit. A lot of the time, when you have such a linear makeup as just draw 7 taunt minions and then play them, if you can just cut one card out of your deck essentially and just say, this cantrip's into another card and I'm playing a 29-card deck at the cost of wasting 2 mana, that's to your benefit, right? Because you want your deck very densely populated with those taunt minions. But the one thing that it does do is give you a really nice edge in the Quest Warrior mirror if your opponent is not running Battle Rage. Because the board is just 2-6, 2-7, 1-4 on both sides. And whenever that happens, you can just go nudge, 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 Battle Rage, draw your deck.
Sure. At the moment, though, Muzzy's pressuring Neirea quite a lot. Just with these little bits here, Aya just proving a bit of a problem. The Ghoul does trade very easily into it. And even with the second War Axe now, and Armor Smith. Too bad for Neirea at this moment, just because the rest of the board is so small. I'm just thinking how afraid he is of Dirty Rat. Imagine if he plays Dirty Rat and Yogg just plays again. He's like, no. Why?
Just rips Yogg out of another game. But we have just been passed some information by our industrious researcher, Big Bad J. Billy Beington himself.
His full title.
It is, yeah. We anointed him as such. Actually, going back to this idea of maybe Muzzy soft-targeting Warrior with some of his tech decisions, Neirea's Warrior is actually 0-3 so far throughout this tournament. He lost to Muzzy with the Warrior against Mage and Shaman in the first round. And Neirea actually changed up his ban strategy for this as well. This is something that I do remember now that I've been handed to it. He banned Druid the first time round. This time he's banned the mid-range Paladin.
That's a good point. Like I said, that's what interests me a lot about rematches. To change your ban strategy, that's a big deal. You don't normally do that. You line up normally bans a certain deck, and that's just how it is. But Neirea mixing it up, and he is still ahead in this series. But he's getting pressured quite a lot. And that quest counter, pretty sure not bugged. Nope, there we go. It was actually 0 out of 7 so far.
Yep.
So not looking fantastic. Although maybe less reliant on the quest at this moment in time versus this deck. It's more just clear the board, don't die.
Some people throw it.
Yeah, that's... Okay, don't survive. Yeah, it's not the end of the world. Especially now, with that Brawl and what we can see from Muzzy's hand, Devolve Maelstrom. If Neirea goes Curator, then suddenly things get cooking.
He needs a big draw here. That is not it. Flame Tongue Totem is just not what he's looking for at this position. Not something that he wants to drop into a War Axe, especially since he missed out on the Stone Claw. And now you set this up around turn 3, 4, or 5 or so, somewhere around there, and said he just needs to not let anything super crazy happen, land that Curator, and that is exactly what Neirea has done.
Yeah, Curator, I feel it's just, regardless of deck it's in, if it is played in a list, it is often just MVP. It's like kind of an unsung hero in that you look at cards like Stonehills, pulling Tyrion, Bloodlust, Doppelgangster Evolve, all the big flashy stuff that can happen in the game. Right. But Curator just gets the job done. It's insane.
Primordial Drake has actually buffed Curator so much, it's insane. And this is actually a real design philosophy that echoes throughout Hearthstone of, instead of actually just literally adjusting the numbers and text on cards, nerf and buff them through adding other cards into the game. There's a feature that I regularly do in collaboration with PC Gamer, who I believe are represented here in our media area in the form of Tim. Hey, Tim. Shout out to Tim. There's a list of top legendaries where I collate a bunch of top players and casters, and I know you've helped me out in the past with that as well. Curator was very rarely ever seen on that list, and now it's just sat now number 2, number 3, somewhere around there. Like, it's insane.
Did love the phrasing, top players, top casters, and you've helped as well. I noticed. But yeah, my favorite way of that I think Blizzards have buffed cards I haven't seen much play is actually Stone Tusk Boar and Rogue Quest. That was one that was really
That's
really
your
nice.
favorite, is it? Okay. Yeah. Quest Rogue actually kind of did a lot of that on its own. I once referred to Quest Rogue as like a care home for forgotten children or something in terms of Hearthstone, which, I don't know, came out of some weird area of the back of my mind, but turns out to be a pretty fitting analogy, I think.
Right. And this is a pretty fitting response to this War Axe with this Corsair coming down.
He's going to need to do a lot better than that, though, I think.
I honestly think the second Curator was dropped without any major threat. It's very, very difficult to get through for Muzzy now.
Sometimes didn't want to behave either. It's dancing all over the place. But now, Primordial Drake, Ravaging Ghoul, Sleep with the Fishes again. And now enough Taunt minions in hand to finish the quest over the course of several turns and just reverse the clock back onto Muzzy. Neirea has win conditions coming out of his ears right now.
Just 2 armor smiths.
Right.
He
can armor smith and just pull out of range. He can use all of these board clears to just completely exhaust Muzzy's hand, or he can finish the quest and just flip it back on its head. And that Doppelgangster is paired with the wrong Volve in hand. That is a devolve and not the evolve that he would have been looking for.
Yeah, now.
It's a pantry spider, though.
There is. I do love Frostcaller, though.
Think about it.
TJ will be thinking about it. Spell damage on the Maelstrom does help get some work done. But no.
Definitely not.
I want to see a spell. I want to see this Frostcaller get
Just
going.
want to see it go off.
I thought this card was going to be good.
The Raven strategy for evaluating cards, if you weren't aware, is just to say every card is good, and then...
That's not true.
It definitely is.
Pretty sure there was a video made that me, you, and Admirable did a review.
Yeah.
And we were saying some cards were bad when they weren't, and some cards were good when they weren't. I'm pretty sure they were featured. Well, that's going to be it. Never mind about us. More about these guys. Neirea does take the series and the rematch over Muzzy. Both players 1-1, but one player doing a lot better than the other in terms of overall results in this championship.
Yeah, really just flipping fortunes on his head. Was vanquished in the opener against Muzzy, but came back